The change in eating habits has been happening over the past 50 years, mainly because people have been moving from rural areas, from farms into cities.
So we have a health crisis that's underpinned by a failing food system. There's no doubt about it.
In fact, in the public health care sector, the single biggest burden in the public health care sector is non-communicable diseases that are diet related.
And unfortunately, that has caused very serious problems in terms of our health, especially the silent killer diseases like your hypertension and diabetes.
So the main reason that determines how much food households have got, the quality of their food and the volume of their food, is the relationship between how much money they've got to spend on food and the cost of that food.
When we look at the cost of a basket of food for a typical household in South Africa, then we will see that in October of 2018, a basket of 44 foods cost 2,949 Rand and 96 cents. That exact same basket in August 2020 cost 3,184 Rand and 48 cents. So we saw that in that basket an increase of 235 Rand. In the same period, we saw the national minimum wage increase by 121 Rand. What that in effect means is that that household that purchased that basket of food will have 113 Rand less to purchase that basket.
Often it's out of the hands of most people. That's the agency for ordinary South Africans to be able to choose and access and then use and eat food.
If the prices of the core foods increase significantly, then the buying strategy of women in low-income households is to drop other foods out of their basket. And so they would drop out of their basket foods such as fresh produce, carrots, tomatoes, fruits. All of those are food that is necessary for good nutrition and to build strong immune systems. Those foods are dropped out of the basket. So we end up then with households eating lots of starch, lots of sugar, and that has health implications going forward.
Sugar has a fat storing effect. It spares the fat and you use up the sugar. So that's the thing. So you store the fat in your body, you don't process it. You can eat maize meal as it is. The problem is it's been processed and it loses most of its nutrients. Now the problem with processed food, once you eat something like that, it shoots up your blood sugar and it shoots up your insulin levels. And over time, you end up being insulin resistant and you develop type 2 diabetes. Diabetes on its own affects your immune system. It lowers your immune system. That's why a diabetic person, if they get a cut, they don't heal very easily because their immune system is compromised. Now you get this very infectious virus with a compromised immune system. That's why diabetic people were so susceptible to the COVID-19.
So when we look at our NCD statistics, particularly as it impacts on Black African women, we will see that high blood pressure, diabetes, etc., is a major cause of death. And that is directly connected to chronic undernutrition. And why does it affect women so much? It is because women tend to feed their children and the men in the households first. And by the time the women get to eat from the pot, there is almost no nutrition left. So by the time they get to the food, all the best nutrition has been taken.
But despite that, we have very high child stunting levels, which means that children are short for their age and underweight for their age. And that affects slightly more than 1 in 4 children in South Africa.
The problem is the nutritional needs of children. They are actually more than those of an adult. So children eat for growth and also for maintenance of the body. So that's why it's very important that they eat food that is very rich in nutrients. They need things like calcium, milk, development of strong bones. They need a lot of protein because they are still growing, for their organs to develop. Because food that is rich in nutrients is very good for neurogeneration. So the problem, they do not develop very well mentally, those children, because they lack the nutrients that are required for generating neurons.
What that means is that they have difficulties learning in school because their cognitive development is impaired. It also means they're much more susceptible to non-communicable diseases. Rather perversely, if you're a malnourished child, you're much more likely to be obese later in life. You're much more likely to suffer from hypertension, diabetes.
Those children are more likely to end up as laborers in our workforce. They will live in poverty. Their children will live in poverty. And so the cycle of poverty continues.
We're also seeing research that's showing a very strong link between chronic childhood malnutrition, which is the kind that affects more than 1 in 4 children, and a significant increased propensity for violence in adults. And that takes place through damage to the brain's impulse control mechanism. We're hardwired when we're hungry to be more aggressive and to think less about the consequences of our actions. So when we have this long-term food deprivation, what happens is that the brain becomes permanently rewired in this fashion, and also makes people more susceptible to substance abuse. So it might be that childhood malnutrition is the single biggest factor behind our very high levels of domestic violence.
So there's something significant about this silence and the silence of what is happening. Some people call it silent hunger, but it's more than this. There's almost a violence to what's happening, very quietly hidden. And it happens within the body, and it's not been acknowledged. And part of it is that we have food that's been provided that satiates people, it fills people, it makes people almost satisfied, but it's so unhealthy. And it's the foods that we should be accessing are largely out of reach, unaffordable, not available. The satiation means that it isn't being recognized, that there isn't an anger around it, which means that because it's not an overt hunger, it isn't catching attention. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Silent hunger is a very serious problem because you feel full, but you are not getting the nutrition that your body needs.
So it's these highly processed foods that are available in supermarkets, but also in the informal economy that have a long shelf life that are so dangerous. So there are colleagues of mine from the University of Western Cape that refer to this as highly processed food products. So it's not real food. It's an assimilation of stuff, of chemicals. It's a simulation of ingredients. And these are being made available so cheaply, yet they are so nasty. And it's in these food environments that this food is being made available. And it's here that most South Africans are interacting. And it's in many ways creating an entrapment. So it traps people. So you have these certain foods available in these places, reinforced by advertising, by messaging about its availability, its price, and then reinforced by the fact that it's cheap. So the lower prices of nasty foods with adverts continuously rolling, those food environments trap us.
I ran a study for a period of just 1 month. I asked two people to eat strictly fruits and vegetables, no sugar, nothing. And then after a month again, they come for a checkup. And it's amazing, the changes we've seen. I've seen one man change from a blood pressure of about 170 over 110 to a blood pressure of 120 over 70. He couldn't believe it.